Archie, I want to retire. Am I going to need $1 million to do it?
That's a great question, Rob. Let's break that rule of thumb. I'm Archie Hoxton.
And I'm Rob Hoxton.
And this is Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. Welcome back to Last Paycheck. We're your hosts, certified financial planners Archie Hoxton and Rob Hoxton. And today we've got a big question for you. How much money do you need to retire? Do you need $1 million? We hear that all the time in the news. You see an article, well, you definitely need $1 million to retire. But we're going to address that and maybe do a little myth busting.
It's funny that this is the topic. I was at the grocery store just 2 days ago, and just out of nowhere, somebody. Now, granted, we live in a small town. We know a lot of people. A lot of people know what we do. But somebody walked up to me, just an acquaintance, don't know him well, and started to tell me the reasons why he doesn't need a financial planner. And he said, and I'm pretty sure that I've got enough or soon will have enough to retire. And so I just asked him, I said, well, how much do you need to retire? I just turned the question around on him. Usually it comes the other way. Right. How much do I need to retire? Well, I just turned the question around on him, and he was notably silent. He grabbed his tomatoes and turned around and walked away.
Well, because in reality, there's not really one good answer to that. Like so many things in our world, the answer is often it depends. Because do you need $1 million? Well, it depends. How much?
We have a lot of clients who've retired with a lot less and live well within their means and have a great retirement. It depends on what your lifestyle looks like and what your obligations are.
Right. So that's often the first question you have to ask yourself. How much money do you spend? How much money do you need in retirement? Now, and this there are lots of rules of thumb here, which we'll probably bring into the conversation. We always say, working with a certified financial planner, that's where you can get greater and greater clarity around that using certain tools and not relying on heuristics or rules of thumb. But one rule of thumb that often comes up is, and it has to do with spending and taking withdrawals from your nest egg, is the safe withdrawal rate. So, Rob, what is the safe withdrawal rate? How would you explain that to someone who, off the street or in the grocery store asks you about it?
Oh, so the safe withdrawal rate, it's hard to know what is safe, but a withdrawal rate is the percent that you take from your investment savings and use to live on. So if you use a distribution or a withdrawal rate that's too high, then you begin to eat into your principal. If it's too low, then your principal continues to grow more quickly than maybe it needs to. But ideally, what you do is you find this point where you're taking distributions enough so that with Social Security and other, maybe if you have pension benefits, that you have enough to live on. You're leaving enough behind so that every year the portfolio, or usually in most years, the portfolio continues to grow so you can give yourself a pay raise. So let's say you take a 3% distribution rate. If you have an average return of, say, 6%, then some of that growth gets to remain in the account. And then next year, the account's larger, so 3% of a larger account means you get to take more money to live on.
Right. Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. And, if you flip it flip it around and you're taking a 10% withdrawal and your account is returning an average of 6%, now you're shrinking by about 4% per year.
Yeah.
So,
and reducing lifestyle is really hard to do. If you're accustomed to living at a certain level and now you realize that you're overspending, it's really tough to cut back. I hear things, and this is maybe the most dangerous phrase that we'll hear as financial planners. That is, I have worked a long time to have a comfortable retirement, and I deserve. Deserve is the most dangerous word. I mean, look, do any of us really deserve anything? Right? I mean, it depends on your outlook on life. But if deserve is an important word in your vocabulary, you may have problems financially down the road.
Right. And because maybe you feel you deserve to maintain the same lifestyle. You've worked hard, you've earned it. However, if your saving didn't reflect what would be required to maintain that lifestyle in retirement, you may feel you deserve it, but you may not be able to do it for very long, right? Eventually, you'll start to see your account values falling, even in good markets. So it all depends. Again, it depends on how much you've saved. And so,
how about the couple or the individual who doesn't really care about passing any assets on to children or to charity? They just ideally would like on the last day that they have on this earth to spend their last penny. That is a particularly difficult one. You know, one of the things that I always talk about not wanting to be in a position to do is to call someone and say, you know what, this distribution that you're taking this month is your last one, right? So anytime you do planning, you really have to plan with the idea that you're not going to spend all of your money, because it's impossible to time it perfectly so that the end of your life comes precisely when the end of your money comes.
well, yeah, and because you're dealing with two factors that you cannot predict. You don't know how long you're going to live, and you don't know what's going to happen in the markets. So you don't know how your portfolio is going to grow or shrink. And so you've got two unknown factors, and you're trying to time them both together perfectly. So really, that's a mindset that I would often kind of discourage a little bit, you know, and maybe loosen up your measure of success. You know, maybe it's not the end of the world if you end your life and you've got a couple $100,000 left in your portfolio. You know, because maybe that means you can donate that to a cause you care about, or to your heirs, or what have you. But you know, if you're shooting for that $1, on the flip side, it would be really bad if 5 years away from your death, which again you don't know when that's going to happen, you spend your last penny. And so maybe loosening up on that mentality can help.
So Archie, what are some of the factors that drive this discussion about how much you need when you get to retirement?
I think the most important one to figure out first is understanding how much income you're going to have, right? Just because you stop working doesn't mean you stop receiving income, right? You've got Social Security. Oftentimes, not as often anymore, especially with younger people, but you know, you still see pensions, especially if you worked for the government in some capacity. So, and then maybe you have an annuity that you plan to use for income. So take stock of your income sources. You know, maybe even break it down to how much you're going to get per month when you retire, and get an idea of what that might look like, and compare that with how much you spend on a, you know, regular basis, on a monthly basis. And so if you know how much you're going to spend, you'll be able to tell how much you're going to need to come out of your portfolio. If you get $5,000 a month in income, you spend $6,000, you're going to be spending $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year from your portfolio. And then you can take, okay, well, you know, what percentage of your portfolio are you going to be taking at, you know, $12,000 a year? And then you could say, all right, well, if it's 10%, can I realistically get a greater than 10% return every year in retirement? That's a pretty tall order. Wouldn't necessarily count on that.
You know, the whole concept of understanding what your need is, what the expenses are, is pretty tough. So when we have folks that come in to do financial planning, one of the things that we'll ask is, you know, what does it take to run your household, your basic spending? You know, not so much, don't worry so much about vacation and stuff like that. or maybe buying a new car every once in a while, but what does it cost on a monthly basis to support yourself? And then we can take that information and inflate it for the future. And I always find that people, I believe that they underestimate. I mean, I don't know because I don't live in their house, but just from all of the years of experience, I believe that initially people underestimate. So in doing a financial plan, we can take the number they say and then just quietly gross that up by another 20 or 30%. Or we could say to them, you know, what you really need to do is you need to go back and look at your spending over the last 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever period, and come back with a solid number. Because if you get that wrong, then it's going to be very difficult for us to help you understand how much you need in that nest egg. Now, this is the type of planning that you typically need to do pretty early in your working life, right? Because once you know how much it's going to take, you've got to have enough time to be able to build that portfolio.
Right.
You don't want to get to age 64 and realize that 250,000 that you've saved actually isn't enough. You need not 250 but 2.5 million, and you don't have any time to build it.
Right.
So just when you think about retirement budgeting, look at your actual spending. Consider the expenses that may go away, like if you pay your mortgage off. But be realistic. Don't plan and think, well, I think I only spend $3,000 or $5,000 a month, when in reality, you spend something more like $7,500. Because remember, there are some expenses that you don't pay every month. Like if you don't have a mortgage, you still have to pay property taxes and insurance, and those are usually paid at one time during the year. So it's really important to get a good handle on those expenses.
And then, you know, do some self-reflection and be honest with yourself. You know, how much control do you have? Because, you know, we're habitual creatures. It is really, really difficult to change some of the habits that we have that are built in with our spending. And so, you know, sometimes it takes a little self-reflection and thinking, you know, and some trial and error. You know, try to reduce your expenses by $1,000 a month. See what that ends up looking like and how successful you are. And that'll give you a sense of how much control you've really got over a long period of time. Because that's going to be another factor. So, you know, because like I said, we're very habitual creatures, and, you know, it's important to get a grip on that.
Archie, you mentioned rule of thumb earlier. One of the rules of thumb that you'll hear kicked around is that you're going to need 75% of your pre-retirement income to live the same lifestyle in retirement. And I'm thinking that's maybe because you don't have to buy work clothes or you're not commuting, so some of those expenses are lower. I haven't really found that to be the case. In fact, what I've found, and research would bear this out, is that in the first few years of retirement, people actually have a tendency to spend more than they did in the years leading up to retirement. You know, it may be because they've postponed or put off things that they wanted to spend money on. Maybe they've got more time now and they're doing home improvement projects, and those cost money. Or maybe they haven't been able to travel and now they've got the travel bug and they want to be able to do that. Or as I said in an earlier episode, maybe they've been fishing off the shore all these years and now they want a little boat to go fishing in. These things cost money. So rules of thumb in retirement planning aren't great. I mean, everybody's situation is different, and yours is as well, and you should take that into consideration.
Right. Well, another one is that like we talked about, that safe withdrawal rate. The rule of thumb is 4%. That may not always hold up, right? That's based on historical returns. We don't know what that's going to look like 20, 30, 40, 50 years out. So,
in fact, we think that the asset returns in the next 20 years are going to be lower than asset returns in the last 20 years. And so that has a big impact.
Right. And that, again, that 4% is based off of being able to get a wide enough margin over 4% on average over time. And that just might not always be true. So watch out for those. Now, you may be in a position where you're really close to retirement and thinking, okay, I keep hearing I need $1 million for retirement. I'm not really even all that close to that. Do I have enough? Am I going to be okay? And the answer, again, is it kind of depends. And it probably makes sense to have a consultation with a professional certified financial planner to look at your situation in particular. But don't fret, because people do it with less than $1 million all the time.
But don't procrastinate.
Don't procrastinate.
The longer you wait, the bigger the problem becomes.
Right.
It's like everything in life. And do remember, just to kind of wrap up, that you as an economic citizen have the levers in your hands to control your financial future. Touch on those levers real quick before we wrap up.
Yeah. The biggest one, which we talked about today, is spending, right? So know how much you're spending. Know how much over your guaranteed income sources that you will need to spend. Then you can get a sense of how much you'll need in a portfolio. The other one is saving. You might still have plenty of time to save. Take advantage of that time, right? And really boost your savings.
The third lever would be timing.
Right, timing. So when do you retire, right? Most people have control over that. You may be forced into retirement, from unforeseen circumstances, but you can control the timing most of the time. And if you feel like you're not quite ready, you don't have a handle on your spending, maybe you feel like you need to save more, you can continue to work, or maybe switch to part-time.
You can have a part-time gig. The other thing to take into consideration, it's a little macabre, but are you likely to receive an inheritance at some point? It's tough to time. Feels a little icky to plan on retirement, because if you, like me, if you love your parents, and like Archie, if you love your parents, you don't really want to think about inheriting anything from them. But it is part of life and part of finance, so something to consider.
Absolutely. I always like to tell people, though, with that's one that you don't have much control over. Try to make sure your plan works out really, really well apart from the inheritance. Yeah. But then that can be a cushion, and that might also afford you a more generous lifestyle. So, well, I think that really wraps up our topic for today. So we hope this was helpful. We hope that if you feel like you were not sure you were going to have $1 million when you retire, that maybe this is a little bit of peace of mind that you may be able to do it without that, or maybe peace of mind that, hey, you might be able to have a great lifestyle without that. So we hope you come back and subscribe, like, and leave a question in the comments for us, and we'll get back to you. Maybe make an episode of it. So, thanks a lot. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.